As previously promised, we are back with our Pokémon Dragon Ball crossover team builder video. And if you recall correctly, we hinted that part 3 was going to be about all of the villains. Today, we are going to be tackling the Big Four. So without further ado, let's start with King Piccolo. Now, we already tackled his son's team in a previous video, but they are very different in terms of their personalities and their gimmicks. Let's start out with an obvious one, Noivern. This dragon-flying bat is a pretty decent stand-in for Tambourine, and its typing kind of ties it with the whole Namekian draconic connection. It is also one of many Pokémon that uses sound fighting as an advantage, which kind of fits with the whole idea of musical instrument-based names for the types of Namekians that we have seen. Also, while we currently have many different bat-themed Pokémon, we've got plenty of those, we feel that this one fits the bill of being on King P's team the best. In a similar vein, we are also giving him a Hariyama, who is famous for using his belly drum attack. Because sounds like a tambourine. This massive sumo wrestler sort of resembles Drum as well, and coincidentally, this son of King Piccolo was born wearing his pants and shoes, which also kind of fits with all of the weirdness of Pokemon wearing clothes. So, okay, who is next? Well, King Piccolo has two pterodactyl-like sons, that being Piano and Ukulele. Remember Ukulele, anyone? No? Okay, so how about the most pterodactyl-esque Pokemon there is? Well, come on, Aerodactyl. I mean, it is hard to find a more classic pterodactyl in the world of Pokemon, because dactyl's in the name. He quite fits the theme of King Piccolo also being kind of ancient. We were considering going for the Mega Evolution of Aerodactyl, but since he is the first villain on this list, let's keep it simple, okay, without too many gimmicks. I can't imagine King Piccolo being flashy. Now the next one might be a surprise, but it rounds up the theme of this team quite well. It's Explode! As he is based amongst many other things on a pipe organ, he does fit the theme of loud musical instrument-esque Pokemon. And while he doesn't resemble any of the Dark Vassals in particular in this case, he does have that vibe still, you know? Something quite fitting with the overall aesthetics of the king. Big, tough, fearless, and loud. Very, very loud. Now, the next two choices are quite tough, although we do have some sort of idea, so we can come up with something. We apologize if you consider this one a little bit silly for your taste, but we will try to explain ourselves here. It's Executor, the Cantonian one. Alright, we already gave the Alolan one to Roshi, so we can't do that again. It would fit a little better due to his dragon typing, but you know what? As a tie-in to Piccolo Jr. and his heavy focus on psychic types, it also fits father and son. Also, Egg Bomb, Barrage, and all of those egg-based attacks, yeah, that does fit with the King's most famous trick. And his last trick. It is, admittedly, a little bit more silly than the rest of his team. But back in the days of Gen 1, Executor was a very powerful Pokemon. Now, let's give him something mean to top out his team. Hydreigon. A demon king such as King Piccolo needs a dark type. And what better to fill up this niche than the most fierce and aggressive pseudo-legendary Pokemon there is, Hydreigon. It does round up his team quite nicely, and the violent nature of this absolute monstrosity makes it a perfect ace in the hole for this final boss of the pre-Z era of Dragon Ball, the template for what was to come. Also, as King Piccolo is kind of a deadbeat dad, it is the ace of a certain other deadbeat dad from the main Pokemon series, so it works out. The next one on this list is, of course, Frieza. The most popular of the Z villains, who has had currently 2 major comebacks as of late, we are going to start with an obvious one. Glalie. I mean, do we need to say more? And according to Mega Glalie's Pokédex entry from Pokémon Sun, the excess energy from Mega Evolutions spill over from its mouth, breaking its jaw. It spews endless blizzards. So, yeah. I don't think Frieza would care about this though, because it would benefit him specifically. And this poor guy would end up being mega evolved, sadly, because maximum performance, I don't care about your problem, you are as strong as possible for me. This is the quintessential Frieza Pokemon in our opinion. But the rest of the team might be a little bit more tricky to place than you might first think. For example, we wanted to give some nods to his most quintessential minions, Zarbon and Dodoria. Now let's start off with Dodoria. Okay, there is a durian-ish Pokemon out there, but instead of it being an offensive beast because of the smell, he is a defensive monstrosity. Behold, Ferrothorn! And we don't usually associate Frieza with defense. Well, this kind of has the right feel for the character, you know? It looks kind of alien, and this is the closest we can get to Dodoria in the world of Pokemon, so you know what, we're just gonna roll with it. Especially with the shiny form, which is slightly more pink, and also gold. So closer to Doria than even the original one. Now Zarbon is even harder when it comes to placing the two. It should be something that can change forms, but we couldn't really find anything that would perfectly fit. Finding something that would work took us ages, but in the end, we decided to go with good old Feraligatr, as Zarbon and his peers do transform into a sort of crocodilian-like form. Yes, it doesn't fully explore the aspect of Zarbon's two forms, but a fierce two-legged alligator does seem to fit Frieza as a right-hand mon. The next one on the list is a legendary. Well, okay, technically it's more like a mythical, but those terms are sometimes interchangeable, depending on the mood, as the villains should have those to make them more challenging for the heroes. And with the old Freezy Pops, the choice could be only one. Of course, you know which one we mean. It's Deoxys. Wait, what? Masako, did you spell Mewtwo wrong? He practically looks like Frieza, come on. Well, okay, maybe, but there is a character that fits that even more. And Deoxys is a good choice for Frieza, you know, to space virus in 4 forms based on DNA because Frieza's a mutant. His species is heavily hinted to mess around with technology to make themselves even better than their original counterparts, so yeah. We do believe that this is one of the better legendary fits when it comes to the likes of Lord Frieza, even if it's not the most obvious one. But sometimes we like to surprise you. The next one on this list, something that's been wrecking the competition lately. It's Goldengo. It is Pokemon number 1000, made out of coins, so it's filthy rich, like Frieza. It's also a trickster, like Frieza. And despite his unassuming look, he is pretty durable, like Frieza. Also the whole Goruden Frieza bit. You get the idea. The Emperor would be so vain enough to get himself one of those. A Ghost Steel typing is also quite scary, and this thing has been monstrous in Gen 9, so it works. And to close an Emperor's team out without using an Emperor Pokemon? Empoleon. With this, Freezy Pops would be leaning toward being a Steel-type specialist. Not something that we thought about when we were starting to write the script, but hey, it gives him that technological edge. Also, water starters can learn ice attacks, so he can have 2 water-heavy hitters to get him that seafood. Win-win. Also, by the way, I also prefer water starters. The next one on the list is obviously Mr. Perfect Cell. And since he is a time traveler, just like future Trunks, we can have some fun with that. His first Pokemon is not related to time travel, but more like dimensions, traveling through different portals. But I can see him coming across one of those ultra wormholes to catch an elusive ultra beast. That's right, it is. Codename UB-02 Absorption, better known as Buzzwole. I mean, come on! It's a bulky, handsome Bugman for a bulky, handsome Bugman. Also, bug, fighting. That's a pretty good typing when it comes to the likes of Mr. Perfect Cell, am I right? Not much to add. It's a bulky tank to start the fun. But still, we are not done. Because just like Trunks, he can use paradox forms. In this case, he could use Roaring Moon, who could have rivalry with Gohan's Icarus Salamence. Maybe it doesn't scream Cell right away, but it has a topical sense from what we have chosen for Cell's biggest foe. We can also give him one of the future Paradox Pokemon to give a little bit of a nod to his android connection. Despite how it looks, it's actually a fire or poison type. Maybe not the obvious choice for Cell, but it does add some variety to that team that is starting to look really scary. Now, before we drop 2 more bombs on you, we shall go with something a little bit tame. A literal Cell Pokemon. Sorry, I'm going to butcher the pronunciation. Ranunculus? Ranunculus? Okay. While it is quite cutesy, it is a pretty competent psychic type, which would do nicely for Cell's team. Also, the cuter appearance might be a small nod to the Cell Juniors. A very tiny nod. Okay, now what everyone was waiting for. This is where Mewtwo features on Cell's team. And you know, it makes sense. 2 bioengineered ultimate life forms just works together, you know? And yes, we are going to be giving him that Mega Mewtwo X variation. We do believe that, at the end of the day, it does fit better with Cell rather than Frieza thematically, with genetic ultimate beings, yeah? Also keep in mind that Cell also has Frieza's DNA, so it all fits. A little small nod to Freezy Pops. And the second bombshell is Genesect. Yeah, we are giving Cell a legend and a myth, upping the game from Frieza quite considerably. Another man-made Pokemon, this time an ancient bug fossil rebuilt to be a weapon. It also fits and might be the final trick up his sleeve, after the heroes think that Mega Mewtwo X is his main guy. Nope. Cells were easier than we thought to come up with, but they were also more colourful than we anticipated. And we will finish today's episode off with Super Buu. We chose this variation of the character because, in theory, it persisted through the strongest form of the pink blob. It's kind of the most complete version of Buu. Now, Buu is very chaotic, and the power gap between him and the other villains on this list is insane. We're talking about pre-Golden Frieza era, by the way. But let's start off with something small, something mild, as he has to have one of the candy Pokemon out there. And the one that is the most obvious, starting his team kind of slowly and innocently, is Slurpuff. It's sweet and weirdly tanky, and it represents the part of innocent Buu still lingering somewhere inside. Still, it will take a slow start before we will get off the rails. The next one being, let me get this right, it is UB-05 Glutton, otherwise known as Guzzlord, a destructive entity of endless hunger that can devour entire ecosystems. Sound familiar? Yeah, it had to be on this team. It represents one of the scariest aspects of Buu. Now, the next one, okay, well, in part 1 we said we wouldn't be using the Pokemon from the Teal Mask DLC for Scarlet and Violet, but since 2.5 months have now passed from that release, we figured we could go with this hat trick without getting too much into that story. That's right, it's 3 in 1. Loyal 3 for that matter. They're called Fazandipiti, Okidogi, and Munkidori. Yeah, seriously. They are quite mischievous, as they appear to have Buu's trademark mixture of silly and menacing. There is also a little hint in the Pokédex that they might have been transformed into slightly nicer forms. And also, Okidogi and Munkidori can kind of work as little nods to Bee and Barbady. Just a very jacked Bee. But otherwise, it does seem accurate. Also, giving an entire legendary TO to Buu, it does seem fair for the final bad guy of Z. But we're also going to give him a myth. And if you know your Pokemon, you know what it's going to be, because this is going to be Super Buu in Pokemon form, essentially. Hooper Unbound. Oh, what's this? A meaner form of a mischievous genie that is actually evil and destructive? Where have we heard that before? I mean, this psychic dark type had to be on this list. How could it not be? It's got its own movie. It's absolutely perfect for Super Buu's ace. And yeah, his team is kind of broken, but so was Buu, am I right? Again, he left all the other villains behind for quite some time. And thus we get to the end of part 3. There will be one more part if you guys don't want any more, which will finally reveal which character is going to be getting a Lucario. We promise it will be coming, so we hope that you enjoy that and this. And remember, these are only our hot takes. If you have a different idea, please feel free to share them in the comments. We always love to read them. Now, take care, folks, and I will see you in the next video. Catch you later.